Hey everyone, in this video I wanted to walk through some of the steps for Lab 1 to get you familiar with what we need to do in order to complete it. So let's start off by going into Lab 1 and then opening up the lab instructions. So the purpose of this lab is to set up a master image that we can use to easily deploy other virtual machines based on that master image. So the idea is we're going to install Windows. We will install all of the updates that are available. We'll install some software that we'd like to have on all of our images, such as Firefox, antivirus software, etc. And then we'll run sysprep. So to get started, what we want to do is make sure that we have the ISO. So you can download the ISO from here. I believe I already have that downloaded. Yes. Okay. So once you have the ISO, you can go ahead and open up VirtualBox, and we'll go ahead and create a new VM for our master image. So we'll click New to create a new one. We'll call this Windows Server 2008 R2 Master. Now you can take the defaults depending on what your hardware looks like. I usually like to jack this up just a little bit to at least 1 gigabyte. We can go ahead and create a new virtual hard disk now. I usually stick with the VirtualBox defaults. This one is the VirtualBox disk image, but if you're going to transfer this later on to like VMware or something, you may want to use their native format. And when it comes to the type of allocation for the hard disk, I usually like to allocate dynamically because by doing this I can go ahead and tell it I'd like a 60 gigabyte disk, and if it's only using 15 gigabytes right now, that's all that it actually takes up on my physical hard drive on my host machine. The other way of doing that would be fixed size, and if you go fixed size, then it's going to take up all 60 gigabytes right now. So we'll go ahead and do dynamically allocated, and I'll let this be 60. Okay, so once that's created, I usually like to go back into settings, and again, if you have the hardware for it, go ahead and give it an extra processor. And then if you double click on it to start, it'll pop up and it'll ask for the ISO disk for the installation. So what we need to do is just browse to find that. And mine's located here. Okay. And then click Start. Alright, so once that comes up, we want to go ahead and make sure that our language and our time and currency look correct. So these are all good with the defaults, and then click Install Now. And what we want to do is select the Windows Server 2008 R2 Data Center full installation. Just click Next. We need to accept the terms of the license agreement. And then since this is a blank hard disk, there is no other operating system installed on it, we need to do a custom installation. It goes ahead and it sees our disk 0, which is our 60 gigabyte disk we created. That's the only one, but that is the one that we want to install Windows on, so we'll highlight it and then click Next. And that's going to go through and perform the installation. This part does take a little bit of time, so I'll come back after this finishes and we'll pick up from there. Alright, so the installation just wrapped up. Did have to or I saw the installation reboot 2 times, and now that it's done, it's come in, it's ready to log in, and it's asking me to change my password for the first time. So the administrator account is the default account that is installed, or you can always expect administrator to be there. It's equivalent to the root account on a Linux system. So we want to give this a good password, something secure, and then click the arrow. So that'll change our password and then log us in for the first time. Alright, so now that we're logged in, the initial configuration task always comes up first. What we want to do first though is go ahead and install some updates and also install the VirtualBox guest editions. So to do the guest editions, we can click on Devices and then Insert Guest Edition CD Image. And if you browse to computer, you'll see that that's been mounted as drive D, and there's the autoplay. So if the autoplay pops up, go ahead and click run. If not, dig into the CD here and click on that executable. So basically we just want to go through this wizard so that we can install the guest editions. That'll give us features like full screen and shared clipboard and shared folders and things like that. So I'll just accept the defaults here. Don't need direct 3D support, so we'll just click install. This will install some device drivers. And once that's finished, we need to reboot. Okay, so after we've rebooted, it is ready to log in. To log on, we need to press Control-Alt-Delete. One frustrating thing that you may run into is pressing Control-Alt-Delete actually talks to your host OS and not the guest OS. So there's two ways that we can get that key sequence to be sent. One way is to come up to Input, Keyboard, and you'll see Insert Control-Alt-Delete. In parentheses here, you'll also see the hotkey sequence is the host key plus a backslash. So on Mac, the host key is the left command key. I think on Windows it's the right control key, but it should tell you that the first time that you run the virtual machine. So we can click that. Now we can enter that password we created a few minutes ago and log in. So at this point, guest editions should be installed, and one of my favorite features of guest editions is the fact that we can now go into full screen mode. So to go into full screen mode, again I'll use the menu here, but there are hotkeys for it. We can go to View, Full Screen Mode, and you'll see that it's Host and F. So in my case, Command and F. That'll full screen it. If your VM adjusts to the resolution of your display, then you definitely have guest editions installed correctly. Another way that we can test is we can try out the shared clipboard. So bidirectional will allow me to copy something here and paste it on my Mac. So let's try that out. So test, let me copy that, Control C. And then we'll come over here and paste it. Awesome. So we know the guest editions are working now. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is go ahead and get the updates applied for Windows Server. There are a lot of updates out there, and the last time we ran this in the last semester, a few students ran into issues having the updates complete. So I did some research. I found a method that I think is going to be a little bit more effective for everyone. There's a convenience roll-up that includes all of the updates up until I think it's May 2016. So that should give us a big head start, and then we'll use Windows Update to finish that off. So in the lab document, I've put a couple links out there. One of them's for the convenience roll-up. So if we click on that, this is what's going to supply us with all of those updates. Now, there's some known issues. Hopefully we won't run into any of those. So let's just skip down to the bottom for how to get this convenience roll up. And the first thing we want to look at is the prerequisites. So to apply this update, we must have Service Pack 1 installed for Windows Server 2008 R2, as well as the April 2015 Servicing Stack update for Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 R2. So let me open up that link. We do already have Service Pack 1. You can verify that by going to Computer and then clicking on System Properties. Up at the top you can see the Operating System Edition as well as Service Pack 1. So we do have that. So for this update we need to scroll down to the bottom again. Methods for obtaining this update. We're just going to go ahead and do a direct download of it. So to get that, we need to identify the operating system and the architecture that we're using. So for us, that's 2008 R2, the architecture's x64 64-bit. So we can click download this package. Make sure you got your right language, click download. Okay, and that one's rather small. Now the next thing we can do is we can come back to the convenience rollup page and click on the Microsoft Update Catalog website link. Alright, once that loads, we just want to identify the operating system. So 2008 R2, this is the only one for it, and we'll click download over here. This will bring up a download window. You actually have to click this link again to get the download to start. This one does take a little bit of time. It's about 400 megabytes. And I've already got this one downloaded. So I've got both of these guys in my downloads folder. The next thing we want to do is let's go and enable shared folder in Windows Server 2008 so that we can access our downloads folder on our host operating system. So to do that, we'll jump back over, go to Devices, and then Shared Folders and Shared Folder Settings. So I already set this up, but if you click the plus icon, we can add a share. What we want to do is give it the folder path of where we would like the share to be on our host operating system. So for me, I just drop this down and I just want to share my home directory. So I'll just share this directory right here. If you're on Windows, you may just want to share your C drive or your user's downloads folder or something like that. So once you have that, you can click OK. I usually make this permanent and auto mount as well so that it'll come back every time I restart. So once you have that, you can click OK, and it's not going to automatically mount the first time. So afterwards we can OK here, and what you'll need to do is go ahead and do a reboot. So when you reboot in Windows Server, it does like to log a reason for why. You don't necessarily have to put anything in there. You can just hit space a couple times and click OK. But if you'd like, this will be logged somewhere, and if you like to review logs, you can see why it is that you did a reboot this time. So maybe we would put something like added a shared folder. Okay, so go ahead and click OK here. Let the VM reboot, and once you're logged back in, we'll go ahead and pick back up from there. Okay, so once you're logged back in, you should see a new drive down here under network locations. Mine mounted as the E drive, and if I double click on that, this is the directories and files that are located on my host operating system. So I can go to the downloads folder. This was the first one that we needed. So looking here, it was it was that update. Specifically, it was the April 2015 Servicing Stack update. Okay, so we want to go ahead and apply that one. If you double click on it, it'll open up. I've already applied mine, but it's a pretty straightforward process. It asks you if you'd like to apply this KB 302369. You say yes, and it only took just a few seconds, and then it was done. So after that, let's go ahead and install that cumulative rollup. We can see that that is the bigger file here. So if we double click on that, it's going to go through that same process. Okay, so after it searches for the updates, it asks you if you'd like to install. Yes, we would. And we'll go ahead and let that run. Alright, so once that finished up, we need to go ahead and do another reboot. So we'll go ahead and restart now. Alright, so once we're logged back in, what we want to do is go ahead and try to run Windows updates to get the rest of the updates that are available. So we can click on this download and install updates link in the initial configuration task. If you've already closed that, you can just come in, hit start, type in update, and click on Windows updates. So the first thing it's going to want us to do is it's going to ask us if we'll turn on automatic updating. That's perfectly fine, so we can go ahead and do that. And then we'll let this run to see if it'll find any updates. Alright, so while this is checking for updates, this can take a little bit of time, so let's go ahead and jump ahead and we'll go ahead and install the extra software that we wanted. So if we look in the lab guide, you'll see under task 5, I have a link provided for Ninite.com. Ninite allows you to easily install multiple software products at the same time without having to click through the wizards. So I suggest that. However, if you prefer, you can definitely go in and browse to these sites and download the software that way. So what we want to install is Firefox, Notepad++, WinRAR, and an antivirus program. Now, some of the antivirus software doesn't seem to work with Windows Server, but I have had good luck with Microsoft Security Essentials, so you may want to target that one. Let's go ahead and browse to Ninite.com. So in here we just want to check the box for any software that we would like to have installed. So we want to have Firefox, Notepad++, WinRAR, and then an antivirus program such as Security Essentials. Okay, so once we have those, you can go ahead and click on the Get Your Ninite. This will download a custom-made installer just for the programs that you selected, and what it'll do is it'll go out and download those installers and then run through the installation for you. So back over here in our guest operating system, I'm going to browse back to my shared folder into downloads, and there's my Ninite file. So if I double click on that, we'll click run, and that's going to go ahead and prepare and process the setups for each of those software products. Okay, so once Ninite finishes, you may want to click on the hyperlink here to show details just to make sure that each application was installed okay. You'll also notice that the shortcuts have been placed out here on the desktop as well as populated within your programs in the start menu. So at this point we just need to go ahead and wait for Windows Update to finish checking. Once that's done, we'll apply the updates and then we'll move on to the sysprep portion. Alright, so once that finally finishes, it should identify some updates. For me, it found 63 important updates. We can see the total download size, and what we want to do is just go ahead and click install. So we'll have to accept some license agreements here. And then once that's done, we see the pop-up down here is letting us know that it's downloading and installing. And we can double click on that icon to take a look at the progress. Okay, so after those got done running, we can see that some updates were not installed. We got 61 of them installed correctly, but only 2 of them failed. And the reason they failed is because Windows updates can't install the update on the system while some of the files are still open and being used. So what we'll need to do is go ahead and restart the operating system. And we'll notice that some of the updates get configured here as well. Alright, once we get back in, let's go ahead and check one more time, make sure there's no more updates. We can see that there is still one more important update, so let's go ahead and install it. Awesome, so we got all of our updates installed. The last thing we want to do is go ahead and run sysprep. So to run sysprep, we can browse to the C drive in the Windows directory. System 32 and the sysprep folder. In there, there'll be a sysprep executable. We can go ahead and double click on that. And what we want to do is just make sure that we check this generalize button, and when we shut down, we want to actually stage shut down instead of reboot. And this will have us enter the system out-of-box experience. Okay, so let's go ahead and click OK. Okay, so once the sysprep process finishes, we can go back into VirtualBox. And what we want to do is we don't want to start up the master image anymore, because once we start it up, it's going to enter that out-of-box experience and not be generalized anymore. So what we want to do instead is make a copy of it. So we can right click on it, go to clone. We can create a server 2008 R2. Probably be a good idea to go ahead and reinitialize the MAC addresses and click continue. And here's where you can make a decision. If you do a full clone, it's going to make a copy of that hard drive and you'll work off that copy. If you do a link clone, then what it'll do is it'll work off the original copy, but any changes that get made will be recorded in a different file. So if you do the link copy, it will actually save disk space, but it may take a little bit of extra processing overhead. So I'll do a link copy and click clone. Once that's cloned, we can go ahead and start it up. Okay, so now we're here in the out-of-box experience. We can go ahead and select our country and time and currency again. We can leave these with the defaults. It's going to ask us for the product key. For now, we can go ahead and skip that, but this is what we'll obtain from DreamSpark. Okay, we'll set the administrator password. And once we get logged in, we'll see that the software that we installed in our master image is still here, as well as the Windows updates that we applied. So that brings us to the end of Lab 1. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can jump into Slack and post there or shoot me an email. If not, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.